Let's go with our theme right now, everybody. It is time for former Star Trek writing fellow action with my old standby. Well, these guys are from the black and white era. I was in the color era of The Outer Limits. Where's that control voice? Where is he? Where is he?
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Okay, all right. So on Wednesday, on Wordsmith Wednesday, we got to talk a little bit about George V. Higgins, who was district attorney. He was a professor at Boston University, based out of the Boston area, really knew the Boston Irish mob. There's just to let you know, there's also a big Italian mob there, the Roman Catholics with the Irish and the Italians, both big in Boston, and a lot of corruption in Boston. As Howie Carr has written about a lot of that. They tried to kill Howie Carr they wanted to put a basketball filled with C4 in his driveway. It's like, what? That was Whitey Bulger and those guys. But here's George V. Higgins, and we talked about him. And, of course, his big breakthrough was The Friends of Eddie Coyle, turned into a movie. That book was released in 1972. And I read a little bit from a short story of his that is in one of the Black Mask quarterlies. And these were alternately published by a couple friends of mine, and then together they worked as a team after the original Black Mask magazine was released for a number of years in the 50s and 60s. They continued it because they had been young guys heavily influenced by the gumshoe noir style. And as I mentioned, that gumshoe noir style was something that grew out of the rise of movies and television with a visual medium now no longer needing radio to describe things, and print now could change and be more focused strictly on dialogue and a lot more pithy writing that people could take almost like a movie script. And people got used to hearing the voices in their heads and reading things that much more often weren't as verbose with explanation, but more based on dialogue and things like that. And George Higgins actually was one of the real breakthroughs of that in the 70s with things like The Friends of Eddie Coyle and a lot of Boston-based detective stuff. Obviously, you've got Robert Parker, he being huge with Spencer, and a number of other Boston-based writers who've done really good work. They're, terrific. But I'll just show you. In fact, I'll just show you this cover right here. It's got Boston Globe on there. Says, rings as true as a police siren. And Dennis Lehane, there's another one. He's got an introduction in it. And Dennis Lehane, of course, has that great... Dennis Lehane has the Boston accent, if you listen to him. He's got the wicked Boston accent. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So there you go. George Higgins is quite an author. And I also want to mention that he had quite a legal career. He was born in Brockton, Massachusetts, which is where Larry the boxer, Larry Hagman. He was a famous boxer. I can't remember exactly the guy's name. He was educated at Boston College, Catholic, and went to BC Law School. Graduated there in 1967. He was a reporter for the Providence Journal and the Associated Press, and became the Assistant Attorney General of Boston. And he was prosecuting organized crime. And he wrote novels, including Cogan's Trade and The Digger's Game, and, of course, The Friends of Eddie Coyle. He's considered a master of Boston noir and a key influence on writers like Elmer Leonard and filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino. right? So there you go. Born 1939, and he died at the age of 60 or 59 in 1999. So yeah, I appreciate George Higgins' work. If you get a chance, you'll really like his stuff. He's got some nonfiction stuff too, which is kind of interesting. So you can check out some of his stuff. And of course, his articles are all out there. But I'm going to turn to what we discussed on Wednesday, the Black Mask Quarterly. And Black Mask Quarterly, you can see down here, this one was edited, let me see, in the inside. It was edited, for a time it was edited by Bill Nolan and this man, but this one has my friend's father, Richard Lehman, Kelly's father, Richard, and Ann's husband, Richard, was the editor of this. This is number one. This is the first volume. And Matthew J. Broccoli. Now, I don't know Matthew J. Broccoli. I've never met Matthew. And I actually never met Richard Lehman, but I've spoken about Richard Lehman and his novels. He has so many novels. Some of them, be warned, they can be very, very violent and bloody. But you'll enjoy Richard Lehman's stuff. He's great. And his wife and his daughter are just terrific people, really good people. So check them out. And Kelly has done her own nonfiction stuff about her father. Really cool. But Bill Nolan, of course, George Clayton Johnson, and Bill wrote Logan's Run. Bill wrote the Quester tapes. And he and George were two of the three writers on the Trilogy of Terror, with Richard Matheson and Karen Black starred in all of those. And those were really something else. But the third one with the Zuni doll chasing her around was the most memorable. And you might be reminded of Talking Tina from Twilight Zone with Telly Savalas. I'm talking Tina, and I don't like you. That was written by Richard Matheson as well. So there you go. But I'm going to turn this. This has great stories in it. It's got Raymond Chandler. It's got George Sims, Lauren Esselman. Lauren Esselman, boy, what a career Lauren Esselman had. It's got William F. Nolan in there, right there. That's called The Pulp Con Kill. It's got Robert Parker in it. Lots of good stuff. But I'm going to read to you from not Raymond Chandler's Backfire, but instead I'm going to read to you what I started reading on Wednesday, A Case of Chivas Regal, on page 82. And like I said, this makes me think of going down to Boston to try to help my friend Ian Freeman, who, of course, got prosecuted by the feds because Ian was selling crypto, and they didn't like Ian. He was a member of the Free State Project, and they tried to get Ian as many times as they could. And so they got him on charges that, as you can see from a great lawyer like Jacob Hornberger, Jacob wrote a 3-part series about how completely bogus it was. And Ian is a good guy. And as I said, it's very strange to get a phone call from a man who drove across the state to attend your mother's memorial service, and he's inside his cell and you can hear it echoing because he's bought time on a tablet to be able to talk to you from his federal prison cell. That's America, everybody. That's America. Freedom of transactions? No. Let's talk about this story. A little jurisprudential corruption, perhaps, or at least an example of a character who doesn't like to work all that much in the courts. This is A Case of Chivas Regal by George V. Higgins. The guy's name is Panda, right? Panda Feeney, 53, was employed as a court officer. He escorted juries between the courtrooms and the rooms where they deliberated, and he made hotel and restaurant accommodations for them when they were sequestered. He fetched sandwiches and coffee for them when they were deliberating, and he delivered messages between them and the judges on their cases when they thought of silly questions during their deliberations. But basically, Panda would say, my job is to take care of the judges and do what they want, all right? What the judges want. Panda did not like all of the judges that he served. Those he disliked made his back hurt, so he would disappear. He would stay somewhere around the second civil session, technically on duty, but a little hard to find. It was not that he feared detection, loafing. He still remembered much of what he had learned wrestling, so he was indifferent to detection. "My back," Panda would say, rubbing it, when some assistant clerk of courts located him bent over morning papers and a cup of coffee in the vacant jury room and said, "Judge wants to see you." Panda would nod, painfully, writhing slowly in his chair. "Naturally, he wants to see me. Could have bet on it. Never fails. My back acts up. There's some guy like him in here. What's he want, huh? You know? Can you tell me that? This damp weather, jeez. I can hardly move." Clerks would never know what it was that judges wanted, only that they wanted Panda and had not seen him around. Panda would nod once. Then Panda would nod once when they told him that, and grimace. "Okay," he would say. "Then can you do me a favor? Tell the judge, when I fought Casey," he has heard of Crusher Casey, even if he's a moron like he acts like he is. Crusher may have been an old guy, but he still had a body slam that ruined me for life. "You can get the judge's coffee for me, can't you? Do an old lamed up guy a favor. And tell him that for me, too." One judge that Panda especially disliked was Henry Nealon. Before Judge Nealon was relieved of trying cases so that he could spend all of his time as the administrator of the courts, he had a run-in with Panda Feeney. Panda, after a few drinks, would sometimes recall the story. Hangin' Hank had spent the morning sending guys to Walpole, handed out about 100 years, and still Hank wasn't satisfied. Gets back in his chambers, and he's still looking to make trouble. Sends Grayson, that pinhead, out to look for me. "I give Grayson the routine," Panda would say, chuckling. "Grayson would believe anything you told him. He goes down and gives the word to Hangin' Hank. Henry blows a gasket," Panda would say, laughing now. "He doesn't believe what Grayson tells him, what I said about my back, right? He's going to check it out. Now I'm sitting there in the jury room. I can hear old Henry coming, stomping on those iron stairs and swearing like a bastard. He's going to take my head off. Lazy damn officers, good-for-nothing shirkers. So I quick think," Panda said. "I don't have much choice. And when old Henry comes in, I'm lying on the table. 'Damn you, Feeney,' he says, when he slams the door open, and then he sees me lying there, like I'm all set to be the guest of honor at my own wake. Except I don't look as good as I will look when old Dave Finnerty finally gets me and leaves me out in the front room. I've been holding my breath, so my face is red. And I've got a look on me like we used to use when the guy that's supposed to be the loser in the matches is pretending he's chewing on your leg or pulling some other dirty trick that only bad guys do. Pain? You know what I mean? Yeah, pain. I'm in agony. One look and you can see it, and Henry's jaw drops down. I don't know, Judge, I say. I've got big tears in my eyes. I hate to even think about it, but the pain is awful. It doesn't stop. I'm going to have to, even though I don't want to, go on disability and just collect a pension. I may not have any choice. Does he believe me? Panda said. At first, I guess he does. Then when he starts to suspect something, maybe I'm jerking his chain, right? But he isn't sure. And even to this day, I catch him looking at me. He still thinks I was giving him the business that day I was on the table. And if he ever gets a shot at me again, that guy is going to take it. I can see it in his eyes. Panda Feeney liked Judge Boyster, so his back was always fine with Andrew Boyster, when Boyster drew a session. Now, you take someone like Drew Boyster, Panda would tell other judges when he served them the first time. He's my idea of a judge. Not the kind of guy, where everything's hard and fast and there's no allowances for human nature, Drew Boyster's the kind of guy that I want judging me if I was ever in the spot, which, God forbid, I should be. If we had more like Andrew Boyster, this would be a better world. Andrew Boyster always squirmed when Panda's praise got back to him. Ah, he'd say, looking embarrassed. I wish Panda wouldn't do that. Every new judge comes along, Panda gives indoctrination. And all it really means, I guess, is that I'm too easy. I let Panda disappear. And if I don't really need him, I let him disappear. I suppose he's sleeping, but then again, Panda needs his rest. Then, too, I let Panda pick the hotels when the juries are sequestered, and the ones that Panda picks are always grateful for the business. He selects the restaurants when the juries sit through dinner, and he picks out the delis when they're having sandwiches. He's probably enriching pals. But then, should he pick those who hate him? And they probably show their appreciation in ways that might be worth some money. Nothing against the law, of course. I'm not suggesting that. But I bet Panda has some trouble paying for his dinners out elsewhere. Of course, he didn't tell Nealon all of that. Panda's explanation differed. You know why I like Drew Boyster? He would squint when he said that, studying the novice judge for some kind of inattention. He thinks I'm smart, is why. He doesn't think I'm stupid. Judge Boyster doesn't come in here like lots of these guys do, and Christ, you come down to it, some of the broads, well, they get even worse. He doesn't just barge in here and start throwing weight around, acting like he owns the place and everybody in it. Drew Boyster, well, I had one case he was involved in before he became a judge, and that was all I needed, right? To see what kind of guy he is. This guy, he may be a lawyer, and he made a lot of money before he went on the bench, although from what I heard, I guess his first wife made a big fat dent in that. But anyway, he's always had some class. Drew Boyster, yeah, he's got class. I've been here 15 years, and Judge Boyster's the best. I never ate a meal with them or had a drink with them. It's not like we're buddies, or nothing like that. It's just that, well, all the years I've been here, he's the best I ever saw. He made that speech with variations to so many judges that when Drew Boyster dropped dead at the age of 59, victim of a massive stroke that killed him instantly, Panda's name was mentioned by everyone who saw Judge Nealon on the morning afterward. Henry Nealon was in charge of making the arrangements for the speakers who would say a few words at Boyster's memorial. And as little as he liked the man, Henry Nealon saw the logic of including Panda Feeney. Look, he said, I realize this may be hard for you. I know how you felt about Drew. Everybody did. Panda shook his head and looked down as though he didn't trust his voice to perform reliably. The thing of it is, Judge Nealon said to Panda, you've been to enough of these things, so you know what they're like. They are kind of deadly, Panda. They're boring and they're dull. We get a couple lawyers who won recent cases in his court. We don't ask folks who lost. The Chief Justice declares this on the record. He was not a pederast. If he has one kid who can talk, we let the kid stand up. And then we all watch carefully to see if the kid breaks down or displays any evidence that he's been using harmful drugs. You gotta watch all these things. For some reason, we don't ask surviving spouses to address us all. It's probably because we're all afraid of what our own spouses might say if they got full attention. And of course, we're not there to reply. Then finally, we asked one friend of his if the dead guy had a friend. And it takes 4 or 5 4 or 5 minutes, kind of long. Say, yeah, you see what I mean, Panda, Judge Nealon said pleadingly. Last guy who gets up at these things is the one who's right. None of the other speakers is a friend of the departed. Someone who knew him and enjoyed his company. No one that just liked him, unless there's another lawyer ever gets a chance to really speak. And we thought, since you knew Drew and really did like him, maybe you could say a few words and do everybody a favor. Panda looked up and shook his head once more. I couldn't do it, Your Honor, he said, and cracked his voice. I wouldn't know what to say. I am not used to making speeches, standing up in public like that. Panda, Nealon said. It could be very short. You could say that case you had, the one that impressed you so much. You never forgot it. You could talk about that case, how Drew showed so much class. Look, you know Drew Boyster's history. We went back a ways with him, his family. Yeah, and it looks like you went back the furthest. Then his family is not extremely happy with him. Even now he's dead. His kids, from everything I hear, they sided with his wife. You'd really help us out a lot if you saw your way clear to do it. Good Lord, Panda, after all these years, just tell everybody once more what you drummed into everybody, what a great guy Drew was. Your Honor, Panda said, coughing deeply as he started. I have got to tell you, I can't talk about that case. Of course you can, Judge Nealon said. It's on the public record. If it's the details that escape you, we can pull the files. We'll take care of that for you. That's part of it. It'll be easy. Judge, Panda said, it wasn't that. It was not a case in court. Well, there was a case in court that Judge Boyster was involved in. But the case I talked about, I can't talk about that. I don't follow you, the judge said. He was starting to look grim. It was Chivas Regal, Panda said with difficulty. A case of Chivas Regal, all right? That was what I meant. Scotch whiskey? Nealon said. A case of booze, you mean? Panda nodded. Uh-huh. That's what it was. And this was back when Drew was a lawyer? Panda nodded once again. Yeah, before he was a judge. Panda, Nealon said severely, this is serious. Drew's dead now. It can't hurt him. Not where he is now. But you're still escorting juries and you still have access to them. If you influenced some verdict back when Drew was practicing and he gave you a case of scotch, well, I don't have to tell you just how serious this is. What was it you did for Drew? Tamper with the jury? Or do something dumb like that? Panda looked indignant. Judge, he said, I resent that. In all the years I've been here, I've never told a jury how they should vote on a case. Uh-huh, Nealon said. Well, you're the first one then. But you've raised the suspicion now, and I'm forced to deal with that. If you don't tell me the truth and tell me the truth right now, I'll have to investigate and see what you did for Drew. And until I'm satisfied, you're going to be suspended. Without pay, I might add, until this is all cleared up. Now, which will it be, Panda? It's your decision now. You can tell me what went on, or you can leave this building right now and wait to hear from the DA. Panda looked more sorrowful than he had looked before. He had to clear his throat again. This won't go any further? It won't, if there's nothing wrong, Judge Nealon said grimly. And if I think there is something wrong, it will go further, Panda. No promises apart from that. You understand me? And I will be the judge of whether you'll be reported. Panda sighed heavily. All right, he said. You got me. But there's nothing wrong with this, with what I did for Drew. Judge Nealon did not comment on that. Over 20 years ago, I got hurt in the ring. I know that, Nealon said. Get on with you and Drew. I'm coming to that, Panda said. Just give me a minute, will you? The doctors told me, Panda, they said, this is it for grappling. You get hit like that again, you'll go out in a wheelchair. You're still a young man and your heart is pretty strong. You get crippled up for life, it's going to be a long one, and you'll have trouble working. Well, that scared the hell right out of me, Panda told Judge Nealon. In wrestling, there's no insurance. I didn't have no money. I was always undercard, a couple $100. And I didn't have any trade, you know what I mean? Something I could do. But right there and then, I'm scared. So what do? I take what comes along. I get into security. I become a guard. First job that I had. First one I had was in the Coast Apartments. That was before it was a condo. This was 63. Since I'm new and all, I am, they put me on nights. So, I don't see who goes out, I just see who goes in. Now, Judge, he said, I don't know just how I should put this to you, because I don't want to shock you or do anything like that. But lots of the big law firms then, they had pads in those tall buildings. And on the tour they had me on, I'd see those guys come in. I'd see them come in with their girlfriends between 6 and 9 at night. And they would not go out again for, it was maybe through to 1. Panda, Nealon said, spare me that. You mean with their nieces they came in? Learned counsel for rich law firms do not get so vulgar as to entertain mere girlfriends in deductible apartments. My mistake, Your Honor, Panda said. Excuse me. Anyway, on the tour they had me on, I often saw the lawyers come in with their nieces right behind them. Now, this took me a while before I got this all figured out. I was fairly innocent when I stopped wrestling. And when I first started in there, I didn't know too much. So one night, this big honcho lawyer comes in with his briefcase, and it's 6 o'clock or so. And I'm pretty stupid. And also with him, right behind him, there's this young lady. Very fine-looking young lady, I might add. And she's got her handbag, and that's all she's carrying. So I assume they're visiting someone. They do not live in the building, or else they would tell me. So I ask them, which apartment? Like I was supposed to ask. Well, Coast did not want people coming in there without they had announced destinations. And the people they were wanted to see them, should know. Well, he gets all mad at me, the guy does, Panda said to Nealon. He tells me he belongs to this firm, which keeps an apartment there. The clients in from out of town, and they stay overnight there. And sometimes in the evening, they have a lot to work on. And they come in with their secretaries, and they work late hours themselves. That's what he's doing. And she's his secretary, Gleason, Boyster, and Muldoon. That's all you need to know. And they go upstairs. Well, Your Honor, nothing happened. That I got trouble for. This guy and his secretary, they go up to work late hours, and I don't know who they are, except they work for a law firm that he says he belongs to. He don't say that he is Gleason, and he don't claim he is Muldoon. I don't know. He's Boyster. And the lady had no name. All I know, all I know her by was her looks. And like I told you, those were fine. She also had a nice smile, and she always gave it to me. I say, always, Judge, he said. And when I say that, I mean this. Wednesday nights, she smiled at me every Wednesday night. The first night was a Wednesday, and then they come back the next one. And I naturally remember them, and I don't ask no questions. And then the Wednesday after that, and the one after that, until I see this is a habit they got going on here. This guy apparently can't get his work done any Wednesday that you name. Tuesdays, he's apparently all right when they blow the quitting whistle. Thursdays, he doesn't show up. I had Fridays off on those days, Fridays and Saturdays. He didn't come in on any Sunday, and he doesn't show up on a Monday. And by now, I've gotten so I know a lot of guys that have problems just like his, except their big nights are different, and their secretaries change, or else they have whole flocks of nieces like you wouldn't have imagined. So I'm wising up a little, and I'm keeping my mouth shut. And also, I'm putting my name around the city because I'm getting older, and those late hours are killing me. Anyway, 2 years go by, and then things start to change. I notice that this guy's starting to come in on Tuesdays, and pretty soon it's Thursdays, and I'm seeing him on Mondays. And when I come in on Sunday, he's been working all weekend. His secretary, too, she's in there. And they're bringing in groceries. And then this other guy gets sick, so I have to cover for him. And Dan, the secretary there, and her boss aren't working Friday nights and Saturday nights, too. Thrive in private practice. The judge looked at him, nodding. The envy of every practitioner. Those hours are just brutal. They must be, Panda said. Well, anyway, the days go by, and one day I'm sitting there. I open up the paper, and what do I see but this picture? And his name's under it. This is attorney Andrew Boyster, who's been working those long hours. And he's in the paper because his wife's suing him. She's suing him in the back, and she's suing him in the front, every which way. What she wants is a nice divorce, and every dime he's got. And there's another picture, which is of Andrew Boyer's wife. And she doesn't look like the lady that I know. She looked a little older, maybe. Henry Nealon nodded. Well, I assumed she was, Pandolfini said. I didn't think too much about it, just how old she might have been. What caught my eye was, she alleged adultery. And I thought I might have some idea of just who she had in mind. Well, Feeney said, the papers had their usual field day, and I got a dirty mind, so of course I read it all. And I'm sitting there one night, the two of them come in, and I'm looking at their pictures. They give me the great big grin, and she asks me how I like it. I don't know what to say. I figure they're gonna tell me I should mind my own damn business. So I mumble at them, and they start to laugh at me. You're going to have to do better than that if your name is Thomas Feeney, Andrew Boyster says to me. And since we're never introduced, that kind of throws me, right? How come me? I say to him. And that is when he tells me I am getting a subpoena. I am going to testify. I say, why me? What do I know? And he says his wife thinks I know lots. Like who's been coming in and going out the building on garden. And she wants to ask me that. Now I figure, Panda said. I am in the glue for sure. So I ask him, well, what do I say? And he says, tell the truth. And they go upstairs laughing, just as happy as can be. which at least made me feel better that the guy's not mad at me. I just may not lose my job. Did you testify? The judge said. Uh-huh, Panda said. And did you tell the truth? The judge said, looking grim again. Absolutely, Panda said. I told the gospel truth. Had on my best blue suit, clean shirt and everything. And they asked me, his wife's lawyers, did I work the Coast Apartments, and how long did I work there? I told him those things truthfully and all the other junk he asked me before he comes to the point. And when he does, he decides he'll be dramatic. Swings around and points to Boyster and says, do you know this man? And I say, yes, I do know him. That is Andrew Boyster. Then he shows me a picture, which is Boyster's secretary, that I guess is now his widow, and he wants to know, do I know her? And I say, yes, I do. Now, he says, like this is the great big salute he's planned, how long have you known these people? Will you tell His Honor that information? And I say, yes, sir, yes, I will. And I turn and face the judge there and I say, I've known them for 2 weeks. Which, of course, was the strict truth, Nealon said, laughing with him. Did he ask you the next question? You mean, when did you first see them? Panda asked the judge. Yeah, Judge Nealon said. That is exactly what I mean. Nope, Panda said. He didn't ask. I think he was flabbergasted. He just stood there and looked at me like his mouth wouldn't work. And then when he got it working, all he could think of asking me was whether I was very sure that was my honest answer. And I said, absolutely, sir. And then I was excused. And when Christmas came that year, I got a case of Chivas Regal. And it was from Andrew Boyster and that second wife of his, who I still think's a nice lady. And then when Drew got his judgeship, my name came up on the list faster than it ever would have otherwise. And that's how I got this job here. Because Drew thought I was smart. What I said, testifying, it didn't make any difference the way the case come out. At least that's what he told me. But he told me, Panda, it was the one laugh that we had while all that crap was going on. We just wanted you to know that we appreciated it. Which is why I thought Drew Boyster was a very classy guy, because of how he treated me. Judge Nealon studied Panda for about a half a minute. Then he nodded and said, okay, you're off the hook. You don't have to speak when we have services for Drew. And I won't report you. Thank you, Judge, Panda said. There's one thing, though. One thing I'd like to know, the judge said thoughtfully. At least, I think I'd like to know it, so I'll tell you what this is. The day when you were on the table, up there in the jury room, the day I burst in on you and you described your back pain to me in such colorful detail? Yeah, I remember it, Judge, Panda Feeney said. If I had asked you that day if you had that back pain then, what would you have told me? Do you want to tell me that? To be candid, Judge, Panda Feeney said, since you've given me that option, no, I don't think that I do. Nealon nodded. Uh-huh, he said. And if I were to ask you, have you ever lied to me? You'd tell me that you never have. Panda Feeney nodded. Yes, and that would be the truth. And that is the end of the case of Chivas Regal. A Case of Chivas Regal by George V. Higgins. And he's on the back right there. This is from the first volume of Black Mask Quarterly. And it was released, when was it? 1985. A lot of these people aren't here anymore. But boy, they could express themselves. That was pretty good story, wasn't it? It's a good story. Yep. And Friends of Eddie Coyle. Great movie. Great book. Check that book out if you want to get a sense. My Teamizer story is based in Boston, and I've got another story called Wounds that is coming out that goes through sort of the underground of the back alleys of Boston and stuff like that as well. So you might want to check those out once I get that started and get it all rolling out there. And there you go, George V. Higgins. And we'll check things out. What'd you think of the story, y'all? Did you like that? All right, very intriguing. Yeah. Thanks, Angelo, for being there, man. Appreciate it. And thank you, X Suites, for putting up the Substack link. That'd be great. Even a couple more people, that would be absolutely wonderful to get the word out to more folks. That would be super cool. Thank you so much. Now, before we go, I do want to mention to you that I've got more written in Fuel. And so I'm going to give this to you right now. In Fuel, we have these two guys who are basically space freighter pilots on this ship. And if you've been watching, you know that they have to take a detour near the asteroid belt sometime in the future as they're carrying some important cargo. And one of the guys looks like he wants to be involved with the corporation. Instead of corporation, it's corporation. And it's extending all across the solar system, even to the point of Pluto, where they have basically corporate slave labor working there. And these guys, they discovered that their ship used to be manned by a crew that somehow disappeared, never came back. And they think they might have a bead on the fact that these guys on this ship went somewhere in the asteroid belt and contacted a group of folks who have been involved in black marketeering and were part of an underground movement that was like a rebellion movement that got crushed years ago. But they can pick up some fuel from these guys and or maybe get away. So, you know, live some life away from this corporate empire. So they are going into the asteroid belt and they get a signal. And so this is where we're going to pick up. Something hits the side of their little escape pod thing that they've left from their ship. And they're going to now rappel down to the surface of this asteroid. And they're hoping that whatever it is that shot up this kinetic little ice pellet thing that signaled to them come down here and put vibrations through these cables that they have connected to the asteroid for their escape pod. They've shot these cables down that have sort of locked in. They're now rappelling down. So the main character's name is Nick, and his partner's co-pilot guy who wants to, it seemed like he wanted to be in the corporate Space Force a little longer. His name is Johnson. Set, his voice crackled in my headphones, a strange version of what I knew, but welcomed as something other than that damnable hiss, which is his airflow. Check, I mimicked his motion. Now they're in the decompression portal, and the other door is opening up now. Did you get that last injection? He asked. We could be exposed to some unusual rads down there because they're going to get some of this radioactive fuel. All set. Okay, let's go. He knelt, reaching to his left below the threshold. Then, evidently satisfied that he had attached the box to the rappel mech to the closest line, he pulled a cable up from it and clipped it to his belt. Then he turned toward me and carefully lowered himself until he was out of view. I'm on, Nick, I heard him report. So I stepped forward, leaned out, breathing faster, nervous heart beating hard in my eardrums. Over the edge, I could see him slowly being winched down towards the surface, and I followed his lead. Down, Down we went, or perhaps up or over, like men in their diving suits, as the hiss of the air feed and the whine of the rappel box filled my helmet. I'd never been through this and found the hungry darkness of infinity and the sparkling, angry pebbles suspended in the belt to be both shockingly real and somehow beyond belief. I knew it was three-dimensional, yet it seemed almost flat, both near and far, compressed into a strange painting that offended my sense of normalcy. At the same time, it evoked a sense of wonder and awe. And one of those nuggets, with all its secreted target terrain, came closer at a few feet per second until what on its surface had looked like uniform gray dust began to resolve into jagged, differentiated rims, craters, valleys, and terrifying rock promontories. Johnson's voice crackled through the whine of the device as the highest of the features met and then rose above us. Okay, Nick? Getting through. Right, we're almost there. I saw his rice-white body slide, maggot-like, the last few yards to the end of the tether, and I toggled down my speed, allowing him time to disconnect and step back. Then, with a final, almost anticlimactic impact, my boots landed on the mottled surface. Johnson already had reattached his rappel device to his suit and had withdrawn the stability sticks from their leg slots when I detached from my umbilical and held on to the line to replace the little machine on my suit and get my own hiking sticks. Around us, bits of ice and mind-piercing mineral rock glittered like stars. Even this far from Old Soul, they found its light and offered some back. We both looked around, attempting to get our bearings beneath the bizarre canopy of catastrophe that slowly had been shifting and transmuting for millennia. Like a God-made tapestry, it told its tales, if anyone were curious enough and deft enough to read the tales. My breathing accelerated and deepened. We were here, isolated, exposed, two blips of blood and sinew, allowed to stand on a star rock because we relied on tech and our dumb desires to get us through. Around us, at a distance of about 500 yards, was the almost complete lip of a crater, the basin of which served as our immediate floor. The pod anchors had stirred up a lot of debris, and they had drilled many yards into the composite surface, leaving grayscale rings of detritus as terminal testimony to their precision and work. The engineers back on Earth would be pleased if they ever found out. Likewise, our sticks worked surprisingly well, utilizing battery-powered hydraulics to plunge the tips into the asteroid's skin and allowing us to keep balanced and attached to the surface in the next-to-nil gravitational field. A button at the top allowed each hand to engage and disengage the thing, and my tests, where I stood, imbued me with a small degree of assurance that I would be able to transverse and explore without fear that I would float away to join the glorious asteroids above. I let go of the tether and looked at the pod far above or beside or beneath before making my way to Johnson. "There it is, Nick," he said through the radio. He pointed at the oblong metallic stand and yard-long cannon-like barrel of the machine that had sent us the signal. It wasn't the only metal construct we discovered as we moved closer, but rested atop a dull base surrounded by a quartet of debris-covered plates, about 6 feet by 12 each, the outer edges of which hinted that they all could rise from below, and maybe tilt away stones or dust that might collect on them as they did. The stealth engineering hinted smarts, but didn't hint at what lay beneath the surface, and Johnson and I turned to each other in what I assumed to be mutual states of mystification until I said, What now? As if in answer, the plates near our feet seemed to twitch. In unison, we moved back, watching like awestruck kids, the seemingly autonomous mechanism simultaneously descend and fold. The central cannon dropped into abyssal Stygian obscurity as the side panels folded down along each of the abutting edges. And as the cannon descended, a bluish-green light stirred. From deep within the dust-howling, silent hollow, the creeping luminosity came to us like an electric fog, plasmatic, unnerving, and surreal. The cannon continued to descend 10, 15, 20 feet, and as it did, it allowed the light to reveal more and more of a steel-framed staircase, complete with handrail on the left, that followed the line in unfolding segments, like plates of armor on a lobster's back, making itself known on the opposite wall from where we stood. Johnson waved for me to follow, and as we reached the opposite wall, I saw the cannon complete its retreat, go flush into the base of the pit, and reveal as it did a metal door framed in a line of aquamarine light. Mines behind it. I again saw reanimated childhood images of ancient and lost Atlantis swirl like tide stuff through my mind. Treasure hunting, adrenaline, kid games. My friend and I stood at the threshold. We could leap and follow. We could turn and go, with our dreams left unexplored, rooted in the shallows of what could be the deepest ocean of possibilities. Leap of faith might be a term misapplied to what we did, because faith implies confident reliance on a higher authority, on the belief that all will be fine. We were making contact with people who, technically speaking, were criminals. They could be pirates eager to take our pod and ship and its cargo. They could be kidnappers, no better than the government goons who hunted down and snatched parents and families whom they claimed were in the wrong colonies or had moved without corporational permission as part of their grand central plans. Tin pot dictators came in all shapes and sizes, always trying to push around or corral their fellow man for the greater good. I preferred to let my fellow man determine what was good in his life and ask the same in return. One of the few good guys on my long list of interpersonal relationships who afforded me that respect, Johnson, took the lead, shifting both of his stability poles into his right hand and slowly pulling himself down the stairs. At near zero gravity, the process was strange, and the stairs became little more than a guide, the left railing a way to pull oneself down ever deeper towards that looming, beckoning portal. He seemed almost to float to a landing, his momentum bringing his awkward-looking spacesuit to the rocky wall in which the door was set. I cut my speed with a slightly extended hold on the rail as he swiveled to watch. "Careful, Armstrong," he radioed. "That last giant step is a doozy." I landed beside him, and he let me grab his raised stabilization poles to stop myself from becoming too well acquainted with the wall, just left of that green glowing door of destiny. I was breathing pretty hard, despite the lack of any real physical challenge to my strength or cardio system. It naturally was because of the stress and fear of losing everything. "Okay," I said. "Right." We looked at each other then at the canopy above. "Pretty beautiful," he said. "True. The beautiful face of a deadly siren, though." I turned on the lights of my suit, bringing him into stark relief against the starry sea and our bleak asteroid burial plot, and he followed suit. "You think if I say what now, the people running this place will open that door?" He smiled. "At least let's not insult them." Then he stepped towards the door and began looking at it, and the edges along either of the thin, subtly green light strips as well. I don't see any way to key it open, indicating there are people in there or something artificial that's assessing our threat level. He didn't reply and continued to study the seam. Well, they know we're here, he reiterated. We can't be out of here. The light around the door changed to orange, and it jumped inward by a couple inches. Then, slowly and silently, it slid open to reveal a small antechamber hewn from the rock, lit by two hand-sized rectangular slabs of what seemed like phosphorescent stone lodged in the walls on either side at about head height. Another door lurked opposite, surrounded this time by no strip of light at all. You want to risk it? He asked. Shit, man. I knew it was an airlock, and so did he, but he also understood that it could be a prison. On Earth, one or more of the terraformed moons, or wherever we might place a rock in the path of a first door like that, to be certain we could escape if the chamber was a trap. But this was space, and in order to open the inner airlock door, the outer door had to shut, and the antechamber had to fill to proper pressure. What if whoever ran this place didn't want us getting out? Johnson's features reflected what I perceived to be similar concern. Then he seemed to let go and shook his head, and he smiled and glanced at me, motioning forward as if offering me a grand opportunity. Be my guest, amigo. I chuckled. Thanks. And I did the deed. Johnson followed, and when he was over the threshold, the door slowly closed, with just the perfect air of menace. Then, what we took to be air began to fill the chamber. The hiss came from each corner, overwhelming the sounds of our own suits, and Johnson and I checked our wrist riders to note the oxygen level rising from 0. Our suit lights likewise attempted to fill the chamber, overwhelming the illumination from the blocks and the door frame, occasionally shifting and reflecting from odd angles as we turned to take in through our helmets more of the confining space. Slowly, far too slowly for my tastes, the little prison filled with air, and our wrist riders told the tale. I checked the exit side as the pressure rose, and was relieved to see what looked like controls to reopen the hatch. A pair of buttons and smaller lights with what looked like tape and handwritten arrows and instructions stuck just above. If the door had been opened improperly, that tape wouldn't have been there. Then the light blocks in the wall suddenly blazed with what seemed like triple the previous intensity, and the inner door slid open, loudly hissing hydraulic strength. Beyond, a tunnel to hell. Alternating rings of gold and green light, spaced approximately 10 feet apart, circling from ceiling to floor and stretching off what might have been more than 100 yards before they curved to our right, where something else, something very brilliantly bright and white, awaited. Johnson turned his body to me, and we shared a look. What do you think? I checked the reads on my writer. Oxygen, nitrogen, even CO2. Look close to norm. Radiation's a little high. And I'm not getting a bead on dust particles, so I don't know. He stepped forward, and I followed. The door slid closed behind us, and then we stood at the foot of that strange, sense-challenging passage, and we absorbed what we could. F it! I heard a hiss and a click, turned, and saw Johnson unlatching his helmet, and eyes closed, lifting it away from his head. He lowered the helmet to his waist. took a deep breath, and sighed. Ah. Then he opened his eyes. You're not worried about the possibility of radioactive particles lodging in your lungs? Well, not with their magic serum in me. He had a point. I'd never been too sure about that stuff, but I went with the idea that the long-term use of the meds was a built-in part of the Corp's profit schedule, allowing seasoned space jockeys to work the skills they acquired and allowing the corporation to maximize profit while protecting their investment. And I wanted out of that helmet. So I clicked the locks near the neck, shut off the air to save resources, and freed my constrained head. The air smelled old and dirty, and it was surprisingly warm. Better? He asked. Yeah. We split away from one another, only by a few yards, taking in the immediate area. I followed Johnson's lead in putting down on the hewn rock floor my helmet and my walking sticks. The floor wasn't just rock, I could tell, because there had to be something magnetic going on. It tugged at the metal in my boots, not exactly approximating gravity, but allowing for more sureness in walking. I always wondered, he said offhandedly, why they didn't use more standard fission propulsion with lead protection for the smaller ships. He tapped an index finger against the right wall near the first ring of light that circled the curious tunnel. Then I found out how much cheaper it was to use Silk's synthetic neutro, and how the corporation liked to pack our level of shipping work with as much cheap stuff as possible. He turned to me, hands moving to his hips. In other words, they saved the best for the bigwigs and cut as many corners as they could for us serfs. Synth neutro was cheap and portable, and about as easy to make as human tears, without debate within the boardrooms. So even though it could run out and require occasional restocking, it became the standard for the grunt ships. He squinted at me. But did you ever hear about how Silk made it? Like how he discovered it and how they stored the stuff after he worked out the method that fueled the empire? I frowned and shook my head. Maybe Wilkerson found out, I said. Johnson nodded, his eyes catching a bit of the handkerchief around my neck. Maybe. Wouldn't you love to ask him? And that's where we stand on fuel. And they're getting real close to the end. Real close. Kudabing says, I like that sweater guard. It reminds me of a Patagonia I used to have. Yeah, I think this actually might be a Patagonia. I don't even know. I'll have to look at it later. See if I can remember when I take it off. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being there. I hope you liked the stories tonight. And I hope I did a good job reading the stories in honor of George Higgins and all of you out there. Thanks for being part of the broadcast tonight. I thought I'd go a little extra and read to you what's going on in Fuel. And I hope you like, Kuda, thank you. Amazing. Thank you. And again, I hesitate to tell you this, but sometimes when I'm reading, not all the time when I'm reading, because of the damage of this long COVID thing, I've had damage. I've got this tinnitus stuff. Thank you, Could Have Been. Thank you. You might notice occasionally my tongue. I have noticed that sometimes my tongue doesn't operate the way that it should, and I have to really concentrate sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time at all. I also don't swallow properly, and you'll notice if you go in to do some research on AI and you put in damage to the vagus nerve, trouble swallowing, hypersalivation, long COVID, you'll see a lot of people have this problem. And it's weird. You might have noticed other people have that sort of sticky sound to their voice now. I've noticed a lot more people now. And I've got it sometimes. And I never did before I had this problem. And sometimes when I try to sleep, I almost choke on my own saliva. It's very, very strange. It's weird, and you just got to keep plugging and fighting, and you're in the mosh pit, And you never give up. Like my dad said, took my hand one time, said, you never give up. I never will. And so it's a big deal. But sometimes while I'm reading, as I mentioned last time, with this tinnitus and this weird exhaustion, I noticed at one time I was doing the reading room and Rhonda was in the reading room, and I was like getting really, really tired and almost disoriented. And I might have mentioned it one time when I was going live. I was like, wow, I feel really weird. And sometimes that happens while I'm doing the reading. And it's this weird, it's not super sudden. It's not like it's an overwhelming thing. It's like, wow, you're getting at the end of your rope. You're really pushing it out there. And it's very, very strange because I love reading and I'm not going to be stopped from reading out loud. No way. No way. And Smuhowski says, I plan to leave the world the same way I entered it, kicking and screaming. That's right, man. Hey, Smoo, we'll jump off the cliff like Butch and Sundance, all right? But we won't get caught by those army guys. Where were they in? Where was that? What Central American country were they in? I can't remember. It wasn't Ecuador. I can't remember. But let me know if you remember what country Butch and Sundance were in that movie. But anyway, Bolivia. They were in Bolivia. So yeah, so I actually felt that a little bit as I was reading from my story, not from the Higgins story. It's weird. It's very strange. But it just makes me want to focus more again on, I've got to figure out, and if you're watching the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, you're probably like, what? Again, it's Liberty Conspiracy work that I do Monday through Friday. But as you know, I expend a lot of energy doing the Liberty Conspiracy work. And I used to be able to do it simultaneous to the MRC TV work. And that was basically my salary while I did this extra, because I was already writing, X number of articles. So I could go online and share you the articles and do a little, extra work each day and get that out there. And so I would get, X amount of money from MRC TV, but I'm not doing that now. And I'm not going back to teaching yet because I'm so sick that I don't know each day if I were to be hired, if I could be reliable to an employer. So I'm my own employer. You're my employer. And so it's going to be very important to come up with a budget to try to make Liberty Conspiracy its own thing. And do that in addition to some of the other things that I do around with other people and selling stuff like the publishing stuff. So that's going to be the way it's going to go until I can get better. And I'm getting a little bit better, and doing more research. Contacted Dr. LaGuardia's office this afternoon just to see. I wasn't sure if I still had an outstanding bill, but they said I was all paid up. I was like, oh, geez, I don't want to mess anything up there, because Dr. LaGuardia is great down there in Connecticut. So just keeping in mind, again, you never give up. And again, it's brought me back. I've seen my friend Steve. He's going to be on the show talking about the Bible, contacting David and his family and Travis and all you guys, doing Theology Thursdays. And if you heard David today, it is not about the material world at all. And I could kick it in the next 5 minutes after this, as morbid as that might sound. And the energy that I had for punk rock and the Damned and supporting Captain Sensible, becoming friends with all those guys, the key would be the friendships. And then the final key would be, hopefully, that I can show some of those friends the lighthouse of God. And I have been able to come to that. And it's Christ. And again, it's amazing to look at the prophecies and then look at the Gospels. And my first name is actually Paul, as Travis and I discussed. And to see, okay, my parents, they gave me an appropriate name. So not that I had a road to Damascus moment, but I've been walking a long, long road and I got there. So that's good stuff. So thank you, everybody, for being there. Please remember, tomorrow noontime will be America Unplugged. If you're watching on the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, Again, I'll get more into Star Trek, more into television production on Television Tuesdays. Got a great one all planned for you. That's going to be awesome, like our Hawaii Five-0 themed show that was good in 2 parts. And that's on Rumble and on YouTube. And we'll start that fundraiser up. I'm going to have to start devoting some time to getting, a website ready and getting things that I can give to people if they reach certain levels of donations. And that ought to be good, asking people if they can get the word around. And again, if you can get the word around about what we're doing, about my Substack and stuff like that, that's really key. And thank you, everybody, for being there. Hallelujah, Kuda. I'm going to put you guys on, the Russians, going to put you guys on the screen. Thank you. I salute you. I wish you could have met my dad. I wish you could have met my mom. Good stuff. Take care, X. Hope I'll get to meet you all sometime. We're in a good pizza place together, and I'll buy the ice cream. All right. Again, if you're watching former Star Trek Writing Fellow, join us Monday through Friday at Liberty Conspiracy. You'll get a good taste of anarchism. It tastes like ice cream, believe me. So have a great night, everybody. I'll leave you with a little something for the Outer Limits outro with that great Outer Limits control voice. It'll be a short outro, but it will be saying farewell. Thank you all. Remember, Knights of the Storm is at 2 tomorrow in the afternoon on Rumble, and America Unplugged on Tony Arterburn's YouTube channel and on the America Unplugged channel on Rumble. And I hope that you will find me at Guard Goldsmith. I hope you'll contribute to what we're doing and the plans we have to do more. Have a great night, everybody. Peace. Take care.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.